Hi, I'm Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about 5 mistakes that I made as an indie author and that I hope that you won't make too. So I'm going to take these from kind of less bad to bad. Honestly, none of them have ruined my career, so it's more about me just sharing with you the things that I wish I would have known when I first started independently publishing. I have published all of these books, and I've published all of these books. Just kidding, one of these was actually traditionally published. Sorry, that was in the wrong stack. There are also a few other books that I have put out that have gone under Write for Hire, which is like a traditional contract, but a little bit different. But I've put out a lot of books, so I've had a lot of experience, and not all of it was great. So let's start at the bottom, number 5. This is the first book that I put out as an independently published author. I put it out under a pen name, Belle Renshaw, and the big mistake that I made was it's a novella. It's pretty thin. The reason why this was a mistake for me, at least at the time, was this I put out in probably 2017, and at the time it was really popular to have a free novella that would then bring in people and they would then read your backlist and it would be great. So I fell under the mistaken impression that having a book 1 as a novella was going to be a good idea. Turns out, not the best idea. The problem with that is that you, as an independently published author, tend to make the most money on series. So you reel in your readers at the beginning of your series and then keep publishing books to have them come back. This is the entire series. It's 5 books. And maybe a sub note to another issue that I ran into is that they're all Christmas books. So if you put out one each year, that's great. You do have a complete series, but it's not something that people necessarily binge unless they're binging it at Christmas time. So that's just a word to the wise. That's for free. But what I did was I put out the first book as a novella, and then once I had the series, as they get longer, that's good for me. Since these are in KU, you can read them straight through. But there was no way for me to actually make any kind of money on the first book when I did Amazon ads. Now, why I point that out is, okay, that's pretty typical. Indie authors tend to lose quite a bit of money on their first books anyways, because that's hopefully what brings your readers into the series. But I can only price this at the max at $1.99 for a digital copy. And when you're doing ads on that, it's just, plus it's in the Christmas category. So all of that just ended up to be maybe not the best foot forward for me as an indie author. Now, on the other side of that, I am happy I did the series. I didn't tell people that it was me. I just did it for fun. I wanted to see if I could really get my feet wet in that indie side of things, and it worked perfectly for that. So not maybe my best decision, but not a bad one either. Okay, mistake number 4. This isn't terrible, but it's not great. I didn't hire a professional editor. Now, let me caveat that by saying I didn't just write the book and throw it up on Amazon. I had several beta readers. I had my mom, who worked in a professional capacity as an editor, read through it. Granted, she wasn't a fiction editor. She did a great job with it, though. So I did have a lot of eyes on it. And at the time, this was several years ago, 2017, I think, 16, 17, I just didn't have the finances for it. Today, from my platform, I shout out saving up money to hire a professional editor. But I want to caveat why this worked for me in a sense and why I still wouldn't advise it for other people. I, to that point, had been a ghostwriter for probably 5 or 6 years by that point. So I had written hundreds of stories. Not to say that I'm a perfect speller or perfect at grammar, because I'm not, but the people I had read for me did have those things in mind, so I felt confident in the book that I was putting out. But looking back, if I had it all to do over again, I would have waited until I could at least pay a proofreader to go through the story itself. For me, developmental edits are mostly taken care of by my beta readers. I tend to not have a ton of developmental edits just because it's usually the story that I want to tell and it comes out the way I want it to come out. But for people who are newer or looking to really make a splash in the market, I highly recommend hiring a professional editor. Now, I know that can be really expensive and you've got to look at it in levels. You've got your, $5,000 to $10,000 edits, and then you also have people who are offering edits $800, which is still a lot, but not quite that $1,000 plus range that you can find. You could find someone who's maybe wanting to get into the career of editing, who would edit for you at a discounted rate. There's ways to go about it, or also trading. So me saying, hey, I could do a cover for you if you could cover some of my editing or things like that. So I think there are options, but to me, I look back and I see that as a mistake. I didn't put out the cleanest book I could have because I wasn't willing to put money into it. All right, number 3. This one is kind of a little strange, but looking back, if I had it all to do over again, I would not have waited so long between releases. I put out my first book in 2017. The second book came out, I want to say maybe it was 2018. There was one year there where I actually skipped a year. So there was definitely a lack of consistency. And if you're trying to make it as an indie author, I think tides are changing, so you don't have to publish quite as much as you used to, but I think sometimes once a year is not quite enough. What I should have done, and if I could go back and do it all over again, is I would have put that book out in December or November, whenever I put it out, of that year, and then followed it up with a spring or summer release, and then another Christmas book. And that spring or summer release, I probably would have started a different series or done a standalone, but we're not there yet. So I just think that it would have been better for my readers to really latch on to who I was, and since they didn't know who I really was, to latch on to who that pen name was by putting out a couple of books. And what maybe I should have done going back before that was have a couple of books written before I even stepped into that indie space, just to then have that presence and that consistency. We do see it changing. The landscape is not as chaotic as it used to be, where you won't make money if you haven't put out 4 books a year. We're not quite there anymore, which is a relief, but I do still think that those who can put out more books are going to see better returns on their investment. And what I've seen from my really good friends who are indie authors is that every time they put out a book, all their other books increase as well. So they'll see a drastic change in their KU dashboard or whatever. So that is something to consider too. Number 2. Now, this is unique to these books. I make that distinction because my sweet romance books are in a very different category than my young adult speculative books. That's just the way that it is. In putting out my debut YA books, I definitely saw them as kind of a chance to redo some of what I had done maybe wrong in the past with my other indie books. I went really big. I took them to Kickstarter. If you've been on this page, you have seen those videos. If not, here's one to check out now. But I went really big. I did multiple editions. I had a Kickstarter limited cover. As an example, this cover is limited to Kickstarter, but this cover is what everyone can purchase wide, so it gets confusing because I have to explain that, especially when Kickstarters come around, etc. So, a mistake that I made that I would not probably make again is that I would have simplified my Kickstarters a little bit more, and while I do think readers enjoy the fact that there are 2 covers, I don't know that I would do that again. I will for this series to complete it, of course, but in any future series, I think I'm just going to stick with one main cover. Now, we do see people choosing to do different ebook covers versus their paperback covers, and that makes a ton of sense because your KU readers are going to be very different than your wide release readers. I could see that, or maybe experimenting with different covers on KU or things like that. The reason why I did it is because I know some people don't like faces on the cover, and I know some people just wanted a nice spacey cover, so having 2 is a good option. But I probably wouldn't do the hard covers as different. I might do paperback and hardcover or something like that. I just felt like it got really complicated, and then moving forward, I, the designer, had to design all of those covers, and that added on a lot to my time. And the number one mistake that I made as an independent author is that I didn't start with a standalone. This is a big thing that I have been realizing. I mean, I've got like 15 plus books out, and I'm just now realizing, why didn't I do this? So I've listened to a couple of podcasts. I'll put the link to one below that was most influential to me through the novel marketing podcast. But man, I should have started with a standalone. And the reason for that is that you're going to most easily bring in new readers to you or your universe, whatever you want to call it, by offering them a very simple product. This is my book. It's not a novella. It's a full book. It's a complete story, and it shows you my world building, even if it's contemporary, my prose, my voice. This is who I am, and you can get that in this one simple, easy to purchase book. I didn't do that. I said, hey, jump on the train of a massive series with me and let's go for it, At the end of the day, I'm happy I did what I did. I'm not displeased with the fact that my Kickstarter for each of my books has continually gotten better and better. I think that that's fantastic. And so I don't necessarily think that it maybe did me a lot of harm, but if I had it all to do over again, I would for sure go back and start with a very easily understandable standalone. In fact, that's actually what I'm going to do for my next Kickstarter. Is I'm going to kind of pivot genres, and I'm going to offer people a very simple, understandable standalone book. Now, that's not to say that that book might not have other books that are associated with it. Maybe they're a series of standalones. I don't know. You could also mess around with things like that, but I definitely think that it's best to start small, start with something that's easily understandable and something that will really encapsulate who you are as an author, so that when your readers pick it up, they finish it, they know that they love your writing, they know that they love your world building, and they're going to follow you from beginning to end of your career. That is what I want for you, and that's what I want for me. So what did you guys think? What one of those things have you fallen prey to if you're an independently published author? Was there something that I said that you maybe hadn't considered being a bit of a pitfall to indie publishing? Tell me in the comments below. And if you would, take a minute to like and subscribe. I am so excited to have you guys here on the channel. I've got a ton of videos planned, but part of the reason why this one is coming out a little later than normal is that I am in the midst of that Kickstarter. It ends this week, so hopefully things will be back to normal soon. But thanks again for watching, and as I like to say, go boldly and write. Let's talk about that. So I'm going to take these from Go lay down. Go lay down. It's okay. So oh my gosh. So I just